and officers to this meeting of the Inverclyde Council today, the 22nd of April 2021. This is also World Earth Day, and the earth is important to us all because it's where we live, and we live there before we all die and go to heaven. And I hope when I'm there, I see one or two of you there too. But that's enough about theology. Let's see if we can do something for Inverclyde. Do we have any apologies or declarations of interest?
Through you, Provost, I received an apology from Councillor Nelson, but I think we've still got some councillors coming in. I don't see Councillor Crowther or Councillor McCormick.
Councillor McCormick's having log-on difficulties. I just spoke to him then.
Right.
And Councillor Crowther has logged on.
Right, okay, so it's just Councillor McCormick at the moment. Is there any declarations of interest?
Could I have one? Anne, if Councillor Nelson's not here, you perhaps could select another member of the planning board to agree the minute of that particular planning board where I declared an interest.
I think, David, that Jim will do that.
Oh, excellent.
That's great. Yes.
And can I remind members, if they wish to speak on any item, please use the chat function. Diane, is it permissible for me to go on with the minutes?
Yes, I don't think anybody declared any interest, so yes.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
An interest in item 5.
Yes, he certainly does. Yeah. Okay. The appointment panel, Head of Legal Services, 3rd of February 2021 at 3 p.m. Michael. Michael isn't here.
Jim, why don't you do it?
I wasn't there. It's either Elizabeth or Lynn.
Lynn. Lynn is the next name. Lynn. No?
Normally I sleep through this part, but yeah, I'm happy.
This is a true record.
Yes.
Yes, this is a true record. Thanks very much, Lynn. The Inverclyde Council, Thursday the 18th of February 2021. I confirm this is a true record. Page 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42 and 43. The Audit Committee, 21st of February 2021 channel.
Provost, I move this as a true record. Thank you.
Thank you. Page 44. Policy and Resources Committee, the 23rd of February 2021. Stephen.
I move the minutes of true record, Provost.
Page 46 and page 45 and page 46. The appointment panel, Head of Legal Services, Lynn.
I think we've lost Lynn, so I think Elizabeth is the last person standing.
Right. Elizabeth, can you confirm this is a true record? Are you reluctant?
I can indeed. Thanks, Provost. That's a true record.
Right, thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. So that was page 47. The Health and Social Care Committee, 25th of February 2021. Robert.
Provost, I'll move it as a true record.
Page 48, page 49 and page 50. The General Purposes Board, 28th of February 2021. Gerard?
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Right, thank you. Page 51. That's it. The Planning Board, 3rd of March 2021. David?
Provost, I move this as a true record.
Page 52 and page 53. The Environment and Regeneration Committee, 4th of March 2021. Michael?
Provost, I'll move this as a true record.
Thank you, Tim. Right, page 54, page 55, and page 56. The Education and Communities Committee, the 9th of March 2021. Jim?
Provost, I'll move this as a true record.
Page 57, page 58, and page 59. The General Purposes Board, 10th of March 2021. Gerard?
I'll move this as a true record, Provost.
Thank you. The Environment and Regeneration Committee, 16th of March 2021 at 1 p.m. Michael?
Provost, I think Michael's still having problems. I'm quite happy to move this as a true record.
Thank you again, Jim. That's pages 61 and 62. There was an afternoon session of the same committee. So that's the Environment and Regeneration Committee, 16th of March 2021 at 2:30 p.m. Jim?
And again, I'll move this as a true record, Provost.
The Inverclyde Council, 18th of March 2021. I confirm this is a true record. Page 65 and page 66. Policy and Resources Committee, 23rd of March 2021. Stephen?
I move the minutes of true record, Provost.
Page 67, 68, and page 69. The Local Police and Fire Scrutiny Committee, 25th of March 2021. Tommy?
I move this a true record, Provost.
Thank you. That's page 70 and page 71.
Sure.
The Planning Board, 7th of April 2021. Jim?
Yeah, I'll move this as a true record, Provost.
Page 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76. The Environment and Regeneration Committee, 13th of April 2021. Jim?
I know you'll be sick of hearing me. I'll move this as a true record, Provost.
Thank you. Not in the slightest bit sick, right? So we have page 77 and 78. The General Purposes Board, 14th of April 2021. Gerard?
I move this as the true record, Provost.
Thank you. That's pages 79 and 80. With that completion of the minutes, we are able, I think, correct me if I'm mistaken, we're able to move to item 3, which is the COVID-19 update for noting. It's a wide-ranging and very necessary update on the Council's response to this pandemic. And I must take the opportunity here to express once again my own appreciation of all our officers' efforts on our behalf, and particularly on the behalf of our community. And I'm sure that most members are echoing these sentiments. Martin, would you like to speak to the paper? Have we lost Martin? It appears so. I can't see him on the screen. I see Stephen McNabb.
Martin's on mute, I think, Provost.
Is Martin on mute?
Yes.
Martin, please, if you could unmute yourself. In the building.
Apologies, Provost, for myself.
No,
I think I just lost.
I'm so happy that you're in fact here to go through the report. Right. Okay, Martin.
Apologies, Provost. I just lost my VPN momentarily there. But I'm back. So this is the usual COVID update report. Just a couple of very quick updates in terms of figures. Currently, background in 4.1, our current rate stands round about 15 cases per 100,000. So it's been fairly stable over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Vaccination is proceeding, and currently, as of yesterday, we were at 65.7% of the Inverclyde adult population having received a first dose, with 20.2% receiving a second dose. And that compares in terms of Scotland and GGC, they are at 60.7 and 56.4 for first dose and 19.8 and 17.4 for the second dose. I think on the subject, we'll come back to vaccination at 8.0, but just to go briefly through the report and section by section, workforce issues at 6.0, that's our regular update on absences from work, and we have dropped off the previous figures that we had for people taking a positive test, as they're not reported in that way any longer. So that's just a regular update. Section 7 is the support for business, and those are the up-to-date figures as of roughly a week ago of business grants and taxi drivers fund and discretionary fund payments. 8.0 covers the vaccination strategy. Probably the thing that's of interest in the vaccination strategy is that it's currently focused mainly on second doses, and this is to do with the absolute need to deliver second doses within a certain timescale. However, the Health Board are confident that we will still see everyone over 16 being receiving a first injection by the end of July. It's really just a phasing thing that has happened, that we're at the moment there's more second doses than first doses being delivered. So we'll see the second doses delivered, and then we'll see a flood of first doses, I think, going through. Section 9 covers testing. As you'll be aware, we now have testing available in Bogglestone, and as of next week, the universal offer, I think it's being called, of testing kits will be made available. Now, we think at the moment that those will be available through Crawfordsburn, which is the symptomatic testing site, and within a couple of weeks we'll also be offering those through Bogglestone. Section 10 is just a brief update on where we are in terms of humanitarian assistance, and obviously numbers have declined in line with the overall decline in cases. But we're still continuing to get regular calls from a number of groups, including people who have been shielding and people just calling into our humanitarian assistance line. Section 11's brief update on regulation. Obviously, we go through sort of very busy periods and very slightly quieter periods, and we're about to go through a very busy period with the opening up of non-essential retail and the return of hospitality. So our officers have been going out in the last week, and will be going out next week and the coming weeks to visit all open premises, and that includes sort of joint visits with Police Scotland to some licensed premises that are reopening. Section 12 covers the economic case for additional government support and the study that is being commissioned for that has been reported to the council previously. Section 13 is streaming of funerals. We can report that we are currently engaged in the tender process and hope to have that up and running fairly soon. But obviously we've got to go through that process before we can deliver it. Section 14, cruise ship visits. Members wish to be aware that there will be a significant number of cruise ship visits this year. However, they're likely to involve relatively little interaction with the shore, shall we say. The initial cruise ship visits that we'll get are the equivalent of, shall we say, all-inclusive holidays where people don't actually leave the vessel. And that will then possibly increase to a point where any people leaving the vessel will be leaving purely on arranged tours. But that waits to be seen where we are in terms of tiers and what can and can't be done. However, there certainly will be a large number of cruise vessels coming to the Greenock Ocean Terminal. Section 15 is just a brief update on service changes round about the changes to tiers on the 26th. So 15.1 covers the opening of the additional services being launched through the libraries. 15.2 covers the Watt Institution, and 15.3 covers the reopening of public conveniences, some of which have been closed, as members will be aware, for a considerable length of time. But they should all be open by Monday at the very latest. We're just working through the process of getting the few that haven't been open inspected and opened up. Section 16 covers the 80th anniversary of the Greenock Blitz and the arrangements being made to commemorate that. Happy to take any questions, or alternatively the officers with more direct responsibility will be able to advise.
I think the first question in the chat function is from Stephen. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Firstly, can I welcome Councillor McCormick to the meeting. It's good to see he's actually made it. I've got a few frantic missed calls from him. My question is related to the sort of workforce issues section. It's probably for Stephen McNabb. Unison, I think this week or late last week, issued a report based on a survey they did of their membership around the sort of impact the pandemic has had on them, around their sort of health and well-being. I think their mental health in particular. And I know we've had some information previously in reports about how we're supporting our workforce through this difficult period. I think it would be useful maybe to have a report on the Unison survey and a bit more detail on how we are supporting and intend to continue to support the workforce. So it's maybe to ask Stephen if he could arrange that maybe to the next Policy and Resources Committee.
Through you, Provost, yes, I've been delighted to do that. We have been working very closely with the trade unions with their survey, and we've also undertaken our own survey of the workforce in terms of the impact of the pandemic and those working from home and the health and well-being issues. So we have taken forward a number of actions and strategies to assist employees. So delighted to bring a report back on that subject. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, both Stephens. Graham, you have a question, I think, on, is it funerals?
That's fine, thank you. Thanks, Provost. Yeah, just before, I also would like to welcome Colin McDonald. I see we've got a new senior member of staff for the first time, certainly, that I've seen him at the meeting, so it's good to have Mr McDonald on board. My question, I wonder if Mr Jimson can give us any update on a wee bit more information. We had talking about the funeral streaming fairly soon. What is the best we've had so far? I'm just wondering if we're out to tender stage, are we not putting, do we not have timescales of when the contractors would have the job completed by? Are our members no nearer getting information of when we can stream funerals?
Martin, can you answer that? No?
Through you, Provost, I'll take it if you want.
Thank you. Thanks, Stuart.
Councillor Brooks, the position is that we're going out to tender on the streaming of funerals tomorrow. We have a 2-week turnaround on that, and we are attempting to expedite the solution as quickly as possible. Once we see what the tenders give us back, we'll know what the solution that the tenderers will be able to provide, and I'm happy to provide members with an update as soon as we have that tender analysis. I can only apologise that it's taken so long, and it's safe to say that over the recent weeks I've attempted to remove as many barriers to this as I possibly can.
Thanks, Stuart. Graham, are you quite happy with that? Yes.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Channel, you have a question.
It's actually, there's a local undertaker advertised on one of his leaflets that he'll do screening for them of any funerals. Another one I got when somebody asked was they could go up their phone and actually do it on their phone and screen it out and tell folk which one to go into. So a lot of folk are doing that, but actually, and I'm sure it's Foster's undertakers, they've got it where they would screen the funeral. And I know other people have had it done from our crematory. So I just wondered if we go forward or if they're going to do it. If all the undertakers done it themselves, I wonder what would happen. You know, because obviously they'll be charging for it, and it will be no complaints. I'll either accept it or not accept it.
Can you elaborate on that at all, Stuart?
You, Provost, currently we do not stop funeral directors or indeed families streaming services from the crematorium. The request that we have is for the council to be able to create the infrastructure and install the infrastructure for our bus streaming service, and that's what we're in the process of tendering.
Thank you. Are you quite happy with that, Luciano? Channel, quite happy? You're on mute, Channel.
No, I'm quite happy with that. Now, could I ask Mark, because he's saying that there's some licensed premises be opening up, and one of the things that seems to be a big thing this time, and we've got to realise what it is how many people your premises will allow in, and how many the distance apart, and you're supposed to have this up now. But most of the publicans, or most of the people on that side, haven't calculated it, and that's going to be a big fear again, because it's 1 metre, and that includes 1 metre between you and your wife at the table, you know, and the different things happen. But so are we going to have people, I'll tell them exactly the distance have got to be and how many folk they can get in, because you'll get roughly, and I'm saying this roughly, about a third of what you normally get in a premises. And that can make a big difference to us jumping up or down again. And I certainly don't want to see anything like that happening to MD. Thanks for that, Provost. But
so
Martin, can you shed some light on this for
Yes,
Channel and the other members?
Through you, Provost. So obviously the initial, where we're going initially as of Monday is the alcohol will only be served outside. So we're really looking at the potential beer gardens for the relatively few that have them. I think the next stage where there may be some service of alcohol inside will be mid-May. So we've got a wee bit of a window to actually work with licensed premises on getting that sorted. The 1 metre between people shouldn't apply to members of the same household. However, it does apply to sort of non-household groups. And that's effectively the same as was in place previously. It's not any different. And if I'm entirely honest, I'm not really sure where some of the comments came from where people were talking about 11-foot long tables, because to have 4 people or 6 people at a table, really you only need the table to be just over 2 meters long and 1 meter across. So I think we can work with them to make sure that we can help them establish their own capacities, because we certainly don't want to be where we were before. You're quite right.
Provost, I totally agree, and that's exactly what I'm trying to say. There's information that's coming out, and we're getting one. You've got to phone up a 2-hour stint. Now you turn around and take, if there's 4 people at the table, each of them's got to put their name and contact number down. Whereas before it was only the, and what they were doing then was the other 3 were taking their 2-hour stint at that table so they could stay longer. That's the sort of thing we've got to try and stop, whether I like it or everybody else likes it, to make sure that we are stay safe. Because if we don't stay safe and get it through, then it's going to just be another big surge. And that's it. That's why I said we've got to look at it. And I think seriously, even because inside you can go inside, but you can't drink alcohol, but you could be sitting inside. And that's the sort of things a lot of them don't realise. But they're still, and the information we got is, even if I went out with my wife, we'd have to be a metre apart. So that's the conflicting stories you're getting. And to run it right, we've got to know, and I don't want to see it surging up again, okay? And I don't think any of us do.
Channel, there's a need for clarity, but the overarching, the most important feature is safety. Safety of the customers and indeed the licensees. I have a question now from Elizabeth.
Thanks, Provost. Couple of comments. Section 12 and Section 13. Section 12, I could not be more excited to sort of see the report that comes out in terms of the Fraser of Alder, and I'm just wondering, is it Policy and Resources Committee that it will be reported back to in the first instance? That's my first question. My second question, comment really, is about the streaming of funerals. I just feel that of all the amazing and incredible reactions that we've had and the agility that we've shown as an organisation, through the whole COVID situation, which has been completely unexpected, we've been on the back foot at every turn just because we don't know what's going to be happening from day to day. I just feel that the reaction that we've had in terms of what we do with funerals has been the one area where we've not been agile enough, and I appreciate and I'm thankful for what Stuart has said, Provost, that he's tried to remove as many barriers to getting us to the point of tender, but I just do feel that in issues like this we just haven't quite been agile enough, and it has been left to families and it has been left to funeral directors. And I just think I really wonder what we can do so that we don't get in that position again with something that really does seem, in the great scheme of things, quite straightforward to do, but has had probably quite a reputational damage to us.
Right.
So that's my 2 questions. Thanks.
No, thanks. The first question is fairly simple. The report from, or the putative report from Fraser of Allender would go, Stephen, I think, to Policy and Resources. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Provost.
The second one, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, what you were saying was we could have done better with regard to funerals.
I think we could have, Provost, and actually just the point I guess I'm making is that in the grand scheme of all the things that we have done, it doesn't seem like a huge thing to have been able to get right. And I'm kind of querying how we can make sure we don't get in that situation again, really.
Is it, when you talk about that situation, Elizabeth, and do you mean funerals?
Streaming funerals. Streaming the funerals. Yeah.
The streaming service. I'm going to ask Stuart to comment on that, but I must say that an awful lot of what the council has done has been done very well, you know, to combat this pandemic. But in any case, Stuart, can you say anything more about the streaming?
Through you, Provost, I cannot defend the situation that we find ourselves in. I share Councillor Robertson's frustration, and it's with, you'll recognise that this has been outstanding for some considerable time. And as I said earlier, we're removing the barriers to allow it to happen.
Thank you. Are you quite happy with that, Elizabeth? Elizabeth?
I'm struggling to get off. Sorry, I'm struggling to get off mute. There might be a delay when I speak. You might all be delighted with the delay, but it will only be temporary. It does. I mean, I guess we are where we are with it, but I don't know how we do the lessons learned part and make sure that we if it's something that seems reasonably straightforward that we can't be we don't seem to be able to be agile with, that we can unblock it quicker. That's all. I don't know what the answer to that is though. It is just I think it's regrettable that we are where we are with it.
Elizabeth, I think Stuart agrees with you, but he is, as he said, he is doing his best to remedy that. Does that leave you a little bit happier than before? Right. Robert, you have a comment to make. Robert. Well, I'll go back to Robert. I think Natasha wants to make a comment. Natasha.
Yes, thank you, Provost. I was just going to comment similarly to Councillor Robertson, but I think she's put it quite eloquently, and I appreciate everything that Stuart Johnson said to us. The other question I had was around cruise ships and just asking around, are cruise ships going to be doing any form of lateral flow testing? Just obviously for when we do have people coming into the area, it will be potentially large numbers, and I understand that some of these will be on tours, but some of them could possibly be tours around Inverclyde.
Martin, would you like to address that?
So through you, Provost, this is currently a relatively early stage in terms of what they're going to do and how they're going to plan it. And it's a bit of a strange one because a lot of the planning's been led by the Department for Transport, because a lot of these vessels will be using Southampton as their home ports. However, we've had some meetings with Peel, and we've had meetings with the Health Board, and we're getting a presentation next week from one of the cruise lines on how they're going to do this. There's no prospect, I don't think, of any sort of tours around Inverclyde this year, unfortunately for local businesses, but I suppose fortunately from the point of view of reducing the risk from cruise ships. Any trips that they're speaking about at this time will involve people getting on buses within the terminal and not getting off the buses till they get back in the terminal. It'll be purely a sightseeing tour, and there'll be no one coming off for either organised or disorganised tours around Inverclyde. So obviously that's not great for local businesses. However, given the pandemic and the risks, I think probably it's what we'd expect this year. So in terms of testing, I think a lot of the cruise lines are either looking at people having PCR tests before they join the cruises or being fully vaccinated before they join the cruises. So they've got fairly detailed plans on that, but we're just working through any sort of implications for Inverclyde with Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board and Public Health Scotland.
Thank you. Thanks. So you happy with that, Natasha? Thank you.
Yes,
now,
Provost, thank you very much. Thank you.
Not at all. I'm going to go. First of all, I'm going to ask Councillor MacLeod, do you wish to make any comment?
Yes, thank you, Provost. First of all, Provost, I echo what you said earlier about thanking all our staff for everything that they've done over the last year. I would thank them for all their efforts. Yes, Provost, it's a couple of questions I've got. I mean, first of all, we've seen a very high uptake that's been reported in past months about the uptake for vaccinations, which is very positive and it's good news. However, what I would be asking Martin is, do we have a number at all of people who have perhaps turned down the vaccination or indeed have missed attending vaccinations? There might be various reasons why people might miss a vaccination, from delays in the post to actually being ill on the day, or something I have raised before, perhaps even somebody not being able to read the literature that's come through their door for whatever reason. So I just wondered if we had any sort of information on that. And when that happens, I assume another letter is sent out to people, giving them a second chance. And I just wondered if there is a letter, when is it sent, and how long did it get to take up? You know, how long does it take to get a second chance to be judged? And my other question, sorry, is regarding the streaming of funerals. I just wondered that once we get the system in place, if, you know, when we can get through this COVID, and hopefully we all do, we get through the pandemic, I wonder if it would be possible, once the system's in place, if it would be possible to keep it in place, because there's a great many people who could be ill, who are elderly, maybe can't leave their home, maybe family members who live abroad, or can't attend a funeral for whatever reason, and it might be an opportunity for people who can't attend funerals in the future to at least be able to watch a loved one or a friend their funeral service. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to direct the first part of the question to Martin. That is have we any figures for those who have not been vaccinated for whatever reason?
So unfortunately, it's something that we have asked the health board if it's possible to get, but part of the issue, I think, is the fact that albeit most of the people attending the sites in Port Glasgow and Greenock are from within Inverclyde, that's not the case across the health board area. So in a lot of the health board sites, for example, in East Renfrewshire or Renfrewshire, they're getting people coming from Glasgow or across the border in another authority. So it's I think the health board can get figures for how many people haven't attended at an individual site, but it doesn't really necessarily tell you that much about how many people haven't attended from a local authority area. So that's quite challenging, and probably the best data we have really is the data on vaccine uptake, which is published by Public Health Scotland, and which I'll now circulate as part of our regular circulation. In terms of whether you get a second letter and how long it gives you, I will look into that and try and get an answer and come back to Councillor MacLeod on that, because I'm not absolutely certain, but I'll find out.
Martin, before I turn to Stuart about screening again, streaming again, are you aware, is there any evidence that some people may not come forward for vaccination because of literacy problems?
So I'm not aware of any issues around about that. However, there is a working group that been set up by the 6 local authorities and the health board to look at hard to reach groups who might have difficulty coming forward for vaccinations. I think there's a large Roma community in parts of Glasgow, and there's various other communities that they want to make sure that they're getting the message out to. I'm not aware of literacy being a particular barrier, but again, I can find that out and come back to you on that.
Thank you, man. And Stuart, is there a possibility of making a streaming service rather, a permanent council service?
Through you, Provost, it's the intention to leave the installation in place with a view to it going beyond the pandemic timescale.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Jim?
Yes, thank you for answers from both Martin and Stuart. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jim. I'm going to ask for Councillor Moran once more. I believe that he's lost connectivity, but I'm not sure. If you're there, Robert.
Provost, he just phoned me, he can't get back in.
You can't get back in. Thanks very much, Jared. Thank you. So, do we note the actions taken to date?
Noted.
Noted. Thank you. The next item number 4 is the recruitment of a chief executive. We're all aware that Aubrey is due to retire on the 19th of September. I was keeping on for another 10 days on the 19th of September this year. And I'll say more about Aubrey at a later council. That's not a threat. But, considering the challenges which this council will face over the next year or so, it's critically important that a replacement is appointed as soon as possible. Stephen, would you like to speak in this?
Thank you very much, Provost. Yes, this report basically seeks approval from the Council on the recruitment and selection process to appoint a new Chief Executive, obviously on the back of Aubrey's decision to retire in September. And you've highlighted the first thing I was going to say about the recommendation that we commence the recruitment and selection process without delay, given some of the future challenges and current challenges we're facing as a council. So I have set out a provisional timetable for the recruitment process. You'll see that at paragraph 5.5 of the report. It's maybe worthwhile mentioning that this matter was previously discussed by members at the Policy and Resources Committee back in January 2017. When we looked at the recruitment selection policy overall, and it was agreed at that point that the appointment of a chief executive would be on the basis of having a short-listing panel of elected members, reflecting the political balance of the council, but with the actual appointment of the chief executive being made involving all council members as the full council sitting as an appointments panel, with the appointment being made based on a majority vote. So that's what the position taken back in 2017, and that's really what's reflected in this process that I've outlined. Maybe a couple of things to highlight to members. At paragraph 5.3, you will see clearly we could be slightly restricted given the COVID position in terms of interviews, and clearly it would be far more preferable to be able to have physical interviews for such a post, a critical post as this. So I'm really just highlighting that to members. We're hoping the position will be eased slightly in June, and really just to assure members that we're trying to make every effort to make sure that we're exploring the possibility of conducting physical interviews with all the appropriate safety measures in place. So we're looking at options to make that happen, and obviously we're keeping our eye on the government guidelines around that as well. At 5.5, just really outlines the recruitment process itself. Maybe just to highlight a couple of things to members. Assuming the report is agreed this afternoon, we would commence with the recruitment advertising tomorrow. The post would close on the 16th of May. We would then move into a shortlisting process, which would be involving the elected members, a panel of 6 elected members as I've outlined there, and it would be reflecting the political balance of the council. So I've highlighted there it would be 2 Labour, 2 SNP, 1 Independent and 1 from the Conservative, Lib Dem, Alba parties, and they would make up the shortlisting panel. I've also highlighted there that given the importance of this appointment, I'm recommending that we engage an external recruitment consultancy to support us with this appointment. This is what we have done in the past, and it's been particularly useful to get that external view on candidates coming forward. In terms of the timescale, the shortlisting panel should meet week commencing the 31st of May, or perhaps the week before if we can fit it in. Those candidates that would be shortlisted would move forward to the assessment centre process, and that's outlined at paragraph 5.5.3. And you'll see there's going to be 4 key elements that candidates would be put through. We've got an occupational personality questionnaire that's done in advance. We'll have competency-based interviewing with assistance of our external consultants. We would have our peer group panel, which you'll all be familiar with in terms of our chief officer appointments, and we maybe involve some external partners in that. and we'd have a scenario, a challenging scenario for our candidates to deal with and report back and respond to our shortlisting panel that I've mentioned above. So we would look to be having that week commencing the 14th of June or perhaps the week before, and a decision would be made after the assessment process on the candidates, if not all, that would move forward to the full council appointments panel, and that would happen the following week towards the end of June, week commencing the 21st of June or the week before. And that would involve those candidates that are in the final lead making a presentation to the full council, all members involved, and there'll be the opportunity for set questions to be asked by members at that meeting as well. Thereafter, the appointment would be made. So following this timeline, we would have hopefully appointed a successful candidate between the middle towards the end of June. The final thing to highlight in the report, I have mentioned that the use of an external recruitment consultancy. Aspen is a company that we've used in the past. They are widely active in the Scottish Council's executive recruitment at the moment, and I'm proposing that we use them again, and I've had a discussion with Alan Cochrane in his role in terms of approving a direct award to Aspen. That's obviously subject to members agreeing this afternoon a budget of up to £20,000 to be met from reserves in order to facilitate that. So really just asking council members today to approve the recruitment process outlined in the report, but I'm happy to take any questions from members. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And before I proceed any further, I must apologise to, excuse me while I die here, but I must apologise to Christopher McElhaney. I didn't realise he was on the phone. I should have called you as either before or after I called Jim McLeod to speak. There are two or three questions or two or three people who may wish to make a comment, Stephen. First of all, Graham, I think you've got a question on the financing of recruitment.
Thank you very much, Provost. Yeah, we're living in a world where £20,000 to the average taxpayer or Inverclyde constituent is a lot of money. I understand that when we balance it to an Inverclyde council budget, it is a very small percentage. Nevertheless, obviously this is a public meeting and this information will go to the public. So I think it's my duty to ask where the £20,000 comes from. You're saying a maximum of 20,000, and how assured are officers that that will be value for money for taxpayers?
Excuse me, Stephen. Value for money is £20,000 too much?
No, I don't think it is too much. I am not anticipating that the full 20,000 will be spent. We will be in consultation with Aspen about their particular role, and there's various aspects that they can assist us with, and I do believe there are some aspects that are more valuable than others. Just to put in perspective, I think the overall costs 5 years ago when we looked at the recruitment of the chief executive was £12,000 to £15,000, and I think there's maybe some elements within that we might not include in this particular recruitment process. So I think to answer the question, we will be focusing our discussions with Aspen on areas that we strongly believe they will add value to the process, because there's clearly areas where there is expertise within the council between HR and obviously the current chief executive advising the panel. So I think £20,000 is very much a top line, and I would imagine that we'd be coming in a fair bit under that, Councillor Brooks.
If I may, Provost, I know that Mr. Puckerin's on the line, obviously, with us. So we're in a public meeting, we're identifying the company that potentially, if we agree, will take the contract. We're identifying the top line budget. Is this fair procurement process, or is somebody going to, are we simply writing a blank cheque for an independent company?
Good afternoon, councillors. Through you, Provost. The whole process that involves a direct award is something that is used on occasion by the council. It certainly isn't writing a blank cheque, which is why there's an upper limit of the £20,000. When Stephen and I discussed it, obviously we assessed what we spent last time with the chief executive, and to be fair, what we've spent with the recruitment of corporate directors as well, where we've used the same company on occasion as well. So, you know, obviously I'll keep an eye and work with Stephen to ensure that we do get value for money for this. But there's obviously a lot of benchmark information out there with what the cost has been for other recruitments that this company has been involved in as well, and we can use that information.
Right, thank you. Thanks, Graham. From what I've heard, the funding and the financing of this will be under the scrutiny of officers. You know, they will be close scrutiny. Are you happy with that?
Yes, thanks very much, Provost.
Thank you. David, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Just a comment and then a question. Stephen, could you please make sure that when we go around to the shortlisting, that as much as possible that can be held in person? I really don't think a video shortlisting is going to do as much good. I think even if necessarily when it comes round to the shortlisting, can we ask the Scottish Government for a special concession to allow us to do it? I think we've got to do that. Secondly, can you guarantee that this appointment won't be another interim appointment?
Thanks, David. Right, two questions for you, Stephen. One on the candidates appearing live at the council, and the other one is the possibility of an interim appointment.
Thank you, Provost. Through you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Wilson, for the question. I mean, I think in terms of the shortlisting, yeah, I've highlighted that every effort will be made to try and arrange physical recruitment process. Now, I must admit, I was referring to when candidates will be attending, for example, the assessment process and the final interview stage. But however, I am happy. I felt at the shortlisting stage amongst members of the shortlisting panel, that's perhaps something that could be done on a virtual basis. However, I am happy to look at that to see if we can do that on a physical basis as well. But my intention in this report was really to ensure that we actually had sight of the candidates as part of the assessment process. But I'm happy to look at the shortlisting element of it as well to see if we can do that on a physical basis also. In terms of the recruitment process, very clearly we have one objective, and that is to recruit a chief executive on a substantive basis, and that's what we will go out to do. And that is absolutely the intention from the outset. There is an element of unknown. We need to wait and see what the candidate pool we get in. And just relating to what Councillor Brooks had said earlier, you know, there is a budget there. It's not all for recruitment consultants. It's to promote the post across the country through social media, through other channels, perhaps the national press as well. That budget will include as well. So we want to actually attract, you know, as good and a widespread candidate pool as we can. But the intention is certainly that the post will be filled on a substantive basis and not an interim basis.
Thank you. All right, you happy with that response, David? Yes, thank you. Channel.
Provost, could I speak to Stephen asked a question? Did I hear him saying 6 members? And I've read it as 6. Because I think the last time it should either be 5 or 7 or 3.
For shortlisting.
Yes, for shortlisting. Yeah. Well, it should be either an odd number, because the one thing you don't want is a stalemate, and I think that's something that should be looked at, that we do an odd number. Now it could be 3, 5, 7, 9, whatever you want, but it's a short one, so it's either between 5 and 7 or 3. Sorry, that's a definite, and I want to know if that's possible. If it's not possible, then I think there's something else I want to say. Okay, if you don't mind, thank you,
Stephen. Not an odd shortlisting panel, but an odd-numbered shortlisting panel?
Yes. Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Rebecca. I have identified a panel of 6 individuals. It was firstly to be consistent with the number of elected members that would be involved in the recruitment of a corporate director. So it was to be consistent with that. The other thing to note in this, I mean, we are not at the position of making a final appointment to the post through this panel. This is a panel that would discuss who should go forward to the next stage in the recruitment process. So we're not a panel that's sitting to identify who is the final winner, so to speak. So I think there's maybe less of an importance to have an odd number at this stage, and it would be hoped that to move candidates on to the shortlisting stage could be done through consensus, because we're not actually looking at an out-and-out winner. And that's really why I've put forward the 6, which is consistent with the corporate director's view. But I'm happy to take any other views on board. But that was my reasoning for selecting those numbers.
General political balance, and also to ensure the political balance, and also this is not the final phase of selection.
No, I know that. All I'm saying is, let's say there's X amount of people apply for this post, and it comes to there's 3 people like A and 3 people like C, and that, that's what I'm saying is, would that not be better, an odd number, so that at least you've got the 3 or 4 people to go forward? As that, other than that, you could get a stalemate for one person could actually hold the whole thing up, because there's 3 here and 3 there voting for a different candidate. And how do you get them to change their mind?
The limited knowledge, sorry, Channel, the limited knowledge I have of these selection processes, it doesn't generally work like that. But as in a tie where you have to have an odd number. But Stephen, can you address Channel's misgivings?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I can only reflect on my own experience, I suppose, in this kind of scenario. As I said, we're not looking at making an appointment at this stage, and the general view would normally be, if there was 2 or maybe 3 members on the shortlisting panel who were supportive of putting a candidate through, then the general feeling would be then they should go through to the next stage. And that's what would happen, rather than excluding them from the next stage. I think that you would be erring on the side of favouring the candidate and putting them through, rather than going to a vote and then excluding them. But that would certainly be my experience, and that's why I felt that the 6 would be something that could be managed in the process.
Thanks, Stephen. Does that set your mind at rest, Channel?
I'm just worried in case it happens, because we had not time the last time, and what I suddenly come up with there is, why don't we give the chairman of that committee the right to, if it comes like that, he can turn around and have a second vote. He can add an added vote, as you do, Provost. You can do the same, and every convener can do it. If it's a tied decision, that might help that decision.
Right.
If there's 6, okay, just came back.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Provost.
Reservations are noted. Robert?
Provost, can I just say I'm really disappointed. I tried to make a contribution a couple of items ago, and I lost all connectivity with the system, which has nothing to do with my equipment, it's with the council's equipment. It's some reason or other it logged me out. Now, my real concern about this, Provost, is next Wednesday, I'm sitting on a double session of the planning committee, and I have to be sure that my IT system is working properly, or I'll not be able to take part in that meeting. I was on it today, I was the licensing board, and we're on before it. It says something about being locked out. I don't know, Provost, but this is unacceptable to me. I've lost out. I already missed the end of that last item as well. How can I
carry out my civic duties responsibly if the equipment I'm using is failing and failing all the time. I'm very unhappy about the whole situation today, Provost, and I want something done about it because that's me missed out on a big part of this meeting today, and I'm very, very upset about it. And I want something done because this is just not good enough. And going forward on Wednesday, when I'm expected to spend a full day on planning, a full day, Provost, and if I can't do that with equipment that's working, then I'll not be going to them, I'm sorry. So I want someone to look at this urgently, Provost. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Can any of the officers address Robert's concerns?
Provost, it's the Chief Executive here. I mean, well, first of all, we're not sure why it's cutting out, but if it's cutting out because of council, then absolutely we apologise. There may be some external reasons why it's happened, but by all means, we will look into it, let members know what has happened, and we will try our best to make sure if it is the council's control, we will try and rectify it. Provost.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Aubrey. Robert, there's an assurance that
there's quite a lot of my colleagues concur with what I'm saying, so it can't be just down to myself. Something needs to be done here. And we're going to get these planning things next week, which will be a complete disaster unless the IT equipment is up to scratch.
Thanks, Robert. We'll note your concerns. Thank you. Are either of the members who are phoning in, do either of them wish to contribute to this?
Yes, please, Provost.
Jim?
Yes, can I ask Stephen, Stephen, is there consideration being given regarding the potential candidates regarding about radius of distance of travel? For somebody, if we're appointing someone, the sort of mileage, or would they be asked? I mean, I know that John Mundell, when Aubrey doesn't live too far away from Inverclyde, John Mundell had a flat, I think, in Europe, which he stayed at during the week. So is there going to be consideration of a distance and where people live who are applying for this post?
Stephen?
Thank you. Through you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor MacLeod. No, I mean, in terms of where people are living, that wouldn't normally come into the equation in terms of the appointee. However, obviously, it might be something that would be discussed at the interview stage if somebody is living away and what their intentions might be in order to fully fulfil the full responsibilities of the job. So it may well be something that's discussed at the interview around how they will fulfil the job if there was an issue around where they were locating themselves. But it wouldn't be a sort of a laid down criteria in terms of being successful or not. We would be looking at the candidates' abilities, qualifications, etc. would be the main focus.
Does that help, Jim?
Yeah, it's just obviously need to obviously know these things. I wouldn't like to make an appointment that somebody's maybe living 100 miles away or whatever and expecting a 200-mile round trip each day. There can be all sorts of reasons why someone might not be able to get here at times. So, but yeah, I'm satisfied with what Stephen said. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Thank you, Stephen. In the absence of any further comments in the chat or questions in the chat function.
Councillor McVeigh wants to come in, Provost.
Right, Councillor McVeigh. Tommy.
No, I have no questions, Provost.
No.
Current with Councillor Morad's comments from earlier.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Tommy. So, do we agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
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 Okay. We're now at agenda item 5, which is on page 77 of the report, and it's the scheme of administration, and it focuses on political balance. The political balance in the committees, subcommittees, etc., should reflect the number of elected members in each grouping on the council. And it does, down to the nearest decimal fraction of a councillor. But I don't want to preempt what our officers have got to say about this. But could you speak to this, Anne?
Yes, thank you very much, Provost. Provost, the purpose of this report is to advise the Council of the requirements necessary to ensure political balance in committees and subcommittees, boards and outside bodies where appropriate, following the resignation of Councillor Chris McElhenny from the SNP group in order to join the ALBA party on the 26th of March. In the summary section of the report at section 2.4, the report sets out the previous political balance of the council, where the SNP group had 7 members, and shows that the present political balance of the council, taking into account the resignation of Councillor Chris McElhenny, the SNP group now have 6 members, with the ALBA party having 1 member. The recommendation of the report is asking the Council to consider the terms of the report, to approve the rebalancing of committees as detailed in Appendix 1, and following consideration of the options set out in sections 5.1 to 5.5 to make the appropriate adjustments to the membership of its committees, subcommittees, boards and outside bodies. I should highlight at this stage that we'd also ask members to consider the other subsections of section 5, and I'll take you through that. In terms of section 4, I've set out the background to the matter. Section 4.3 shows the previous political balance meant the representation on all of the council's standing committees and boards of 11 members was as set out there. And I've highlighted that following the local government elections in May 2017, members agreed that the requirement of the Council's standing orders to achieve a balance of political representation would be met by an alternative 4 SNP on 4 committees and 3 SNP and 1 Liberal Democrat representative on the other 4 thematic committees. In section 4.5, you'll see that the present political balance for the standing committees and boards comprising of 11 members requires to be altered as is shown in Appendix 1, and I've set out the details below. For ease of reference, Appendix 1 sets out the existing and proposed political balance in the main committees, and Appendix 2 details the existing party-by-party representation. Section 5 of the report looks at the 8 main thematic committees, and I've very much focused upon this. And you'll see at section 5.3, it's highlighted that in order to give effect to the new political balance of the remaining thematic committees, it would be necessary for the SNP group to reduce by 1 representative in each of the 4 committees, in respect of which they have 4 members. That's Environment and Regeneration, Education and Committees, Local Fire and Police Scrutiny Committee, and the General Purposes Board, and they would require to reduce to 3 members, and they would require to appoint 1 replacement to the above committees and boards from the Liberal Democrat and ALBA member, so that they are both equitably appointed in relation to all thematic committees. The report provides a solution in paragraph 5.4. Councillor Chris McElhenny was formerly one of the 4 SNP members on the Education and Communities Committee. And if Councillor Chris McElhenny was so minded to remain on this committee as an ALBA member, then the overall balance of the Lib Dem ALBA representation would be achieved, with Councillor Rebecca remaining on the Health and Social Care Committee. This, of course, I stress, is entirely within the discretion of the Council. In section 5.5, I've highlighted that in order to try to minimise disruption to the Council in what is the last 12 months of the administration, one option would be for Councillor Chris McElhenny to remain on the Education and Communities Committee as set out in paragraph 5.4 and go on the remaining 3 thematic committees
That is Environment and Regeneration, General Purposes Board and the Local Fire and Police Scrutiny Committee. The benefit of that is that it would not affect any other political party other than the SNP group, and there would be no change to Councillor Rebecca's membership. So what I've strived to achieve is a simplicity and to provide the least disruptive option. I should stress that in section 5.8, I'm not proposing any change to the licensing board. This is a statutory body. The political makeup of the group, it does not reflect the political balance in any way. And given we're in the final 12 months of the administration, I'm submitting that there should be no change in this respect. 5.9 deals with the Strategic Leaders Forum and the Members Budget Working Group, and that should be amended in order to include the ALBA representation. And finally, in 5.10, I'm highlighting that a change requires to be made to the HR Appeals Board. In the paragraph, it states that there are 6 members in the board. Apologies for the error. There are in fact 5 members. The board currently has 2 SNP members on the board, and to achieve political balance, it would be necessary for the SNP group to reduce by 1 member, and 1 member would require to be appointed from the Conservative, Liberal Democrats and ALBA parties. I've not made any recommendations in relation to representatives to outside bodies, which I deal with in section 6. The reason for that is I'm trying to minimise disruption to the council. So if I just very quickly run over the appendices with you. In Appendix 1, you'll see we show the existing political balance where SNP group had 7 members, and the proposed political balance showing the difference that SNP having 6 members makes. Appendix 2 sets out the breakdown of membership on committees, subcommittees and boards, showing the breakdown that was when SNP party had 7 members, and Appendix 3 provides the same information. Appendix 4 deals with the outside bodies, but as I stated earlier, I'm not making any positive recommendation in relation to that. Having said that, should emphasise it's entirely a matter for the members to decide the outcome, and moreover I should point out that no member is compelled to accept any membership. Finally, Appendix 6 showed the formula that was used in order to calculate the membership of 3-member bodies to 8-member bodies when the SNP party had 7 members, and Appendix A7 shows the new formula with the SNP party having 6 members. Take you back to the recommendation. I'm hoping that members will note the report, approve the rebalancing of the committees as set out, and consider the options set out in section 5, which are aimed at providing the council members with simplicity and the least disruptive option. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Anne. That was quite complex, but you think you've simplified it for me at any rate. But in any case, I think the ideas which inform the report are that we should have equity, political equity, and minimum disruption to the council over the next 12 months. I think that we have Christopher, Councillor McLeany, wishes to speak via phone.
Yes, thank you, Provost, and thank you, Anne. I'm sure that was very helpful to the members present that didn't read the report, but I'm sure that's very clear to everyone now. Just one point of clarity, though, of course, I did not resign from the SNP group in the council. I resigned from the Scottish National Party. And obviously I won't go into that in too much detail because it's a matter not for the council, but albeit here we are and we have a report on it. So just if you allow me, Provost, for 30 seconds or a minute or so. Of course, thank you, Provost. You know, one of the first people that taught me the importance of principles, Provost, was yourself. And I know you don't like me reminding you that you were once my teacher because perhaps it makes you feel a bit older than you are. But principles in politics are as important as they are in any walk of life. And to leave a party that I have loved and I have campaigned for longer than perhaps some members present have been involved in politics, it was not an easy decision, and it does not reflect on the Inverclyde SNP council group. It reflects simply on the noble cause that I have pursued, as you know, my whole adult life, and that is a noble cause of one's country's independence. And sadly, I felt that I could no longer stay in the Scottish National Party because I just did not think the party were progressing in that cause, which, you know, I've previously lost careers over, at the pace, urgency and importance that I think was required. But in terms of my role as an Inverclyde councillor, the second point being, I, as I'm sure you did yourself, Provost, got into politics to improve people's lives. And back to the point of principles, that I just was unable to stay in the party with too much time fixated on what I would class as niche issues, gender identity politics, middle class, bourgeois indulgences, when we represent an area with the highest level of deprivation in Scotland. We look out to the Clyde and people take pictures in awe and wonder of submarines with nuclear weapons sailing by our coastline when we have a food bank in our town centre. And I just think that ultimately Scotland needs a fundamental shake-up. We need political representation that actually starts to get back to the root cause of issues that people get political in the first place, and that is actually taking on some of the issues that established parties, I think, and I don't mean any offence to anyone here, have neglected for too long at the cost of, you know, a managerial style of politics, which sadly I think has taken over Scotland. So in terms of this report, Anne, I apologise that, you know, it did present you a piece of work that you perhaps didn't need to do. In an ideal world, none of the positions would have changed, because my former colleagues in the SNP would have been happy to work in coalition with me, because I'm pretty sure that whether they'll be voting the same way as me or I'll be voting the same way as them, I don't see that changing going forward. But of course, considering my father was in the group still, I certainly offer the hand of friendship to my colleagues in the SNP group, as indeed, Provost, as I always have to you and others in the council, because ultimately, and I see Councillor Rebecca is to come in after me, as he quite often says, you know, Inverclyde can achieve a lot better if its political representatives work together for the better of the people of Inverclyde, not for the better and the personal advancement of one's political party.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was an excellent synopsis of your position, Christopher. Thank you. I think next to speak would be Channel.
Yeah, Provost, that's just actually, first of all, thank Christopher for what he said. It's something I've always had close to me. As Inverclyde, there's too many people through the years, and even now, so selfish that they're thinking it's only me. We went through the worst year going, every one of us, and you've seen a lot of things as well as I have, Provost, and there's other folk the same way. And I'd like to say, first of all, you shouldn't have lost any jobs because of your beliefs. That's the one thing that niggled me. And I know when I was a young boy, I had a hard life because of people's attitudes, and even sometimes people that were, let's say, went to the same school and everything else. And it was good to get into Inverclyde. And my main concerns in there, and you've heard me saying it, Christopher mentioned it, is Inverclyde, not political parties. That's for Westminster or Edinburgh. We've got to work for the better of Inverclyde and get rid of this poverty and the names that they give us. And yet, to me, and you've heard me saying through charity work, it's one of the best places to work and get any donation going to help people worse than ourselves. And I hope whatever happens later on, that we can work together, irrespective of whether they like us, don't like us, and work together for the better of each of us and Inverclyde as a whole. So, Christopher, the best of luck to what you're doing, and the best of luck to everybody else. And I hope all the whole lot of you have a healthy year coming on and beyond it. And Inverclyde does get off its backside and work and get to its place where it should be. And that's a leader in the world as it was before. And if you get into their history, you'll find that in a lot of things. So we should start taking a bit of pride in ourselves and stop running ourselves down and get up there and start fighting again, Provost. And I know how you feel when you're walking about as well in town and you talk to folk. And I know how you're regarded at your old profession as a teacher. I still talk highly of you, and that tells you something. Tells you what type of gentleman you are. So the best of luck to everybody. Thank you, Provost.
Provost, with your permission, if I could interrupt, Provost, you may wish to take this opportunity to remind members that we are in purdah and that political statements are not appropriate at this time.
Thank you, Anne. Thanks for the timely reminder. Jim McElhaney.
Thanks, Provost. Were we to be in the chamber today, I'm sure you and your advisors beside you, either side of you, in the Provost chair, would be clamping down on any back chat, any talking, any comments, snide remarks. Now we're on a virtual setting. There was protocols issued at the very start where the chat function should be used to raise a question or to intimate to the chair that you want to raise a question or ask a comment, not for snide remarks or to add any debate or to take the opportunity to add to debate. So I think it's out of order for members to use the chat function inappropriately. I'd just like to make that point to you, Provost.
Thanks very much, Jim, and may I remind members that actually, to tell you the truth, Jim, when I reflect on it, that remarks have been a constant feature of it, but as you say, we probably should keep them to the minimum. They should be used for questions and comment. Thank you. Jim McLeod. Jim, do you wish to speak?
No comment. Thank you.
No comment, right. Do we agree the recommendations?
Provost.
Sorry?
Sorry, I wasn't sure, I didn't realise you were going to recommendations. I just wondered whether we're going to make an appointment for the HR Appeals Board, which is an appointment required today.
Provost,
I'll go back to Anne.
Yes, thank you very much. Provost, Councillor Brooks is of course absolutely correct. So in terms of section 5.10 of the report, the members do in fact require to appoint a member from the Conservative, Liberals or ALBA parties. Provost, you may wish to ask if there are any proposals in that connection, and I see Councillor Wilson and Councillor Rebecca both have their hands up.
Right, I'll go to David first. David.
I would like to second what Councillor Rebecca is going to propose.
Right, okay.
You
Now,
look at my books.
It could be anything. You want to second anything which Councillor Rebecca says.
Yeah.
And this, yes, anything, right, okay. That gives you full scope, Channel.
Well, the first thing, Provost, what size of the cheque do you want out his bank book? And I'll get him to second it. But seriously,
we are not corrupt here in Inverclyde.
I never said that.
Corruption is unknown.
Anyway, obviously, Chris doesn't want to go in the way things are just now. He want to see what he can do and how he gets on. And I'm quite happy to nominate Graham Brooks for that position. I'm
happy to second that.
Graham Brooks, right. Is there a counter proposal? No, definitely not. Graham, you're the man.
Thank you very much, Provost.
Okay.
Right, thank you. Now, do we agree the recommendations?
Provost, apologies for interrupting. Provost, I think before we sort of go to that, I think we would need to be absolutely clear which members are coming off the committees and which members are going on to the committees. Councillor Robertson has been good enough to provide me with an indication. Councillor Robertson, do you wish to address the council?
I will if I can get off mute. Right. Yes, thank you.
You're off mute.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Anne. I'll just go through quickly the changes that we are proposing, if that's okay. In terms of a reduction from 43 on the environment and regeneration, we would propose that Councillor Jim McElhenney would come off of that committee. For the Police and Fire Scrutiny Committee, for a reduction from 43, we would propose that Councillor Christopher Curley would come off that committee. For the General Purposes Board, for a reduction from 4 to 3, we would propose that Councillor John Crowther come off. To make room for Councillor Brooks on the HR Appeals Board, we would be proposing that Councillor Jim McElhenney come off from our party. For Education and Communities, we recognise that there's no change because Councillor Chris McElhenney was in effect our 4th member and he'll be there in his own right as an ALPA member. And for our one addition for us to maintain our 3 members on Health and Social Care, we would propose that Councillor Jim McElhenney would go on to Health and Social Care for our party.
How does that stand? I'm not asking you, Elizabeth, but Anne,
yeah, that's very helpful.
Satisfy the various criteria, yeah.
Yes, that's very helpful.
Yeah,
and
right.
Just really for the avoidance of doubt, it would be helpful if Councillor Chris McElhenney could confirm that he will go on to the General Purposes Board and the Local Fire and Police Scrutiny Committee.
Christopher, can you do that?
I've done that already, Provost, but I'll do it again in the meeting.
Right. Okay, okay. That's agreement there.
Okay.
Anne, could you?
Yes, so Councillor Robertson, are you moving the motion regarding the proposals?
I'm having to come off mute again. I'm having to come off mute again to do that, so it's taking me ages. Apologies. Provost, I would like to move that, and I think Councillor Curley will be seconding it for me.
Chris?
I'm happy to second. Just for a point of order, just to ensure, I don't think we mentioned the Environment Regeneration Committee, just to ensure that Chris McElhenney is also coming onto that committee. I don't think that Anne covered that in her summary.
Apologies. Well, Education and Communities Committee, Councillor McElhenney was already on that because he was one of the 4 SNP members. So the proposal is that there would be no change and Councillor McElhenney would remain on that as a new ALBA member.
No, my clarification with respect to environment and regeneration.
Oh, environment and regeneration, apologies. Yes, so the proposal is that SNP would reduce by 1 member, and I believe Councillor Robertson covered that. That was the first committee that she mentioned, that Jim McElhenney would come off it, and the proposal is that Councillor Chris McElhenney would go on to it.
Yes. That's fine, I'm happy to second that motion.
I'm obliged, thank you. Are there any amendments to that motion? Any objections? I think the motion's granted, Provost.
Now, we'll return to the recommendations. Do we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. You know, I'll spend half my time here apologising. I see now that, Stephen, you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, that was just because I was wishing we were going to actually get round to the business that we were supposed to be dealing with, rather than providing political platforms, Provost. But we've now done that. We've now got round and dealt with the business, so we can move on.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Stephen. I've got here, before we go on to the next item on the agenda, that Elizabeth, that you want to ask a question.
My question was along the lines of making the decisions as well. So that was.
It's been addressed. It's been addressed. Yes. Great. Okay. With that, we can move to the item 6. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Item 6. The appointment of trustees to Peter Stanton Memorial Trust. This is fairly straightforward, I would imagine. There are 3 trustees. By dint of being Provost, I'm one of them. And in 2017, we chose Jim McLeod, Councillor McLeod, and Robert, Councillor Moran, to serve as the other trustees. The current term of office expires on the 25th of May this year. Jim and Robert are both willing to continue as trustees until the local government elections next year. So does any member have any objection to the three of us continuing to serve?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. We'll agree the recommendations.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agenda item number 7. That's the one before 8, right? Okay. Generally speaking, right. This is the Clyde Muirshiel Regional Park Liaison Group, and it's to do with the appointment of elected members. This is fairly straightforward too, I would imagine. This is a remit from Environment and Regeneration. The former Park Authority held its final meeting in February this year. At that meeting, it was proposed that a Clyde Muirshiel Regional Park Liaison Group be established to guide the future direction of the park. The Environment and Regeneration Committee has recommended that, subject to our agreement, Councillors Nelson and Wilson be nominated as our representatives.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Right. Okay. Which item is that for? 6. Agenda item number 8. Sorry, David, did you wish to make a comment on the liaison group?
Yeah, my only comment is I think that what's happened with Clyde Muirshiel Regional Park is very good for Inverclyde. It will allow us to concentrate on Cornelise and Lunderson Bay, who are two prime sites that we have within the park, which I think have historically, through the previous arrangement, been sadly neglected. And I think it's a very good move. And I know Councillor Nelson's happy to serve for the next year on the liaison committee.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Thank you. Stephen, did you want to speak on that?
No, I was actually intimating the previous item, Provost. I was just going to formally move what you'd subsequently moved, so I don't need to speak. And I'm happy to support Councillor Wilson and Councillor Nelson. I did passionately make a plea to the Environment Regeneration Committee in their behalf, and I was grateful that the committee agreed.
Right. You owe Stephen, Councillor McCabe, a debt of extreme gratitude, David. I hope you deliver on it. Right. We are now.
Too pally here.
We are now at agenda item number 8. This is a request.
Point of order, please, Provost.
Who's that? Sorry.
Christopher Maculini.
Christopher. Right. Okay. Yes.
I mean, obviously, this is a full council meeting with 9 or 10 agenda items that could perceivably go to an adversarial political vote followed after political debate. I mean, this current item, I did plan to speak in favour of it, but could you just give me clarity, because there seemed to be a change of standing orders that I've seen that it suggested that because we were in the purdah period, political debate wasn't allowed at the meeting now.
Right. Is this agenda item number 8, Christopher? Are we talking about agenda item number 8?
Yes. I was wanting to speak in favour of this item, but obviously in the previous item it was said that it's purdah and no political speeches are allowed, but which is news to me because whenever I've been at council, we've had some quite heated political debates in a purdah period at the council. I'm not aware of any standing orders that would forbid a member making political comment during the meeting.
This is the one about perception of safety impediments in our public parks.
Yes, I wholeheartedly support Councillor Quinn's motion, and I wanted to speak in favour of it, and I'm asking if that's allowed because Ms Sinclair had previously said that we weren't allowed to make political statements during the meeting.
I'm not.
Provost, with your permission, would it help if I come in at this point? Provost, this is a member's request from Councillor Quinn, and it's not a political matter. Had it been a political matter, then it would have been a motion rather than a member's request. So Councillor Chris McElhenney is free to discuss this matter and make submissions to the Council.
Okay. Purdah doesn't apply to this, right? Okay, let's get back to the preamble to the report. This is a request from Councillor Lynn for consultation on whether females perceive any safety impediment in our public paths and cycleways. And in many ways, this could be considered as part of a much broader concern about the safety of females. Right, Lynn, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. First of all, just to say I'm having huge connection problems, so it's probably better that you hear me rather than hear me and see me. So I've turned off my camera just so that the signal is better. So yeah, there's been a very few positive things that have came out of this pandemic. One of those is that more people have become active and enjoying being outdoors more. Not only is this good for their physical health, but also their mental health. During this increase in activity and the national discussion around safety for women and girls, women have been discussing how their freedoms in public spaces can be limited in a way that isn't always the case for men. As Inverclyde's Women's Champion through my online, sorry, there's a lot of interference there. As Inverclyde Women's Champion, through my online forum of 200 women, I have been asking women about their own experiences. I've got a few examples of where local women have had to consider their safety when using our public spaces for travel, exercise or recreation. The women who have had two separate walking routes, one for the middle of the day and the other when it starts to get dark. The women who love to cycle or run but need to be accompanied by a friend, as doing this alone in the darker evenings is a concern. The teenage girl who loves skateboarding, but the park is dominated by males and isn't inclusive for her. The parent who picks her child up from high school in the winter as she's concerned about her crossing through a park in the dark. A woman who takes a 10-minute detour back from the local shop as the direct path is too dark due to overhanging bushes. The woman who loves to sit in the park, but this becomes a no-go zone in the darker evenings. And the woman who walks to work during the summer, but takes a 5-minute taxi ride when the autumn arrives. And the teenage girl who stays on the phone to her mum for the 15-minute walk home to ensure she gets there safely. These are not isolated cases. This is just how it is. The women are now asking what can be done to address this. This consultation is the first stage in doing this. Our priorities here in Inverclyde Council is to try and address the health inequalities, encourage more people to be active and the infrastructure investments to encourage active travel. My concern is that no gender mainstreaming takes place within the Council when we carry out these projects. This consultation will be a start to addressing this, finding out from the women themselves how they feel they have equal access and opportunity to enjoy our public spaces and what measures can be put in place to address this. You may ask, why don't we just consult on safety for everyone? Why is it just women? The answer is this. We have a gender-specific issue about women's safety, and we need to gather gender-specific data to achieve a gender-focused solution. By addressing the specific issue about female safety, then we, by default, make our public spaces safe for everyone. I hope you all get behind this request for a consultation, listening to the views of women and playing your part in making Inverclyde safe for our women and girls. Thank you.
Thanks. Do you have a seconder, Lynn?
Provost, I don't think I need a seconder as it's not a motion. But I would refer back to Mrs. Sinclair actually just to clarify.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so you don't require a seconder. Thanks, Lynn. Understand that Channel wants to make a comment.
Yeah, it's actually, we want to make Inverclyde safer, and Lynn's talked about people going along paths which are badly lit, and I think we should have a group set up to look at, and this is including, I think the police should be in this. I know the old cemetery has been thinned out because people used to hide up there and people couldn't walk through it and girls were being attacked. I've got 3 daughters, and Lynn's talking about the phone. I even told my daughters when they were out, if somebody stole their purse, to phone a taxi, tell them who they were, and I would pay it no matter where it was if they're going to get a hold of me. That's what I think about safety. If I took someone home when my daughter was dancing, I made sure that they text down to the car if they were up a tenement, so I knew they were up there close. But the one thing I've got to say, right now, it's not just girls. Right now, we're getting boys that have been badly attacked, and that. I won't get into all the details, but my wife, I keep saying it was female and child abuse for years in the police force, and let's just say some nights she was rather upset, couldn't get over what she'd come across, and that's awful, and we don't want to get up. I think we've got to look at the whole Inverclyde for everybody, because we've got older people as well, and I'm talking about older women who have a fear going out because of places being dark. So I'd like to widen that to make sure that we cover Inverclyde and kids from the youngest to the oldest women that's in the town that feel, and man, that they feel it's safe to go out, walk about and have no problems. And that's what I would be asking officers to look at, because you don't want to just say it's the one side. And we're talking about equality nowadays. And no matter what you might think, these people that do these things do not care if you're male or female and what age you are. And that's the awful thing about it. And I said earlier on, it's me and just me. That's their attitude, and it's attitude to everyone else. I was brought up slightly different from that, and you helped older women across the street. You give them a seat in the bus. I know a lot of folk don't like that, but that's the way I see it. And if I see somebody turn around and being abused, I'll open my mouth to do it. For the first time I've ended up, we'll say, getting the police to folk. But seriously, we've got to look at it, and Lynn's right, we've got to make Inverclyde a place to be proud of. And that means getting rid of these folk that are blackening the name of the place and harming the women, kids, male or female. And that's the only thing I'd ask. That if we're going to do anything, we look at it and look at it for a whole lot, because we're supposed to have equality. It would be wrong if we done it for boys and men. It'd be wrong if we just done it up and say that you mean to tell me it's safe for one but not the other. No, if it's not safe, it's not safe. And let's try to get this through. Okay, thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Channel. Natasha.
Thank you, Provost. Yep, I just wanted to say thank you to Lynn for bringing this to the council. She did answer one of the questions by saying, why should we focus purely on women? And she had outlined that this would help make Inverclyde safer for everybody. I think it would be great to be able to do it for women, but I do think that we do need to maybe look at community safety as a whole as well. So I do support what Councillor Quinn is asking for today. I do think that would be beneficial for us as a council and local authority to look wider than that, because we do have people that are getting attacked and bullied in the street because they're trans or LGBTQI. We've got people that potentially are ill or infirm, or they maybe have an underlying vulnerability that isn't always visible, that can impede on the way that they perceive the safety of the area as well. Councillor Rebecca briefly touched on like vulnerable older people that maybe wouldn't want to go to the shops at a certain time of night because there's perceived groups of people that might make them feel unsafe. So although I do welcome what Councillor Quinn said, I would like to ask that we potentially look at doing a wider community review as well, not to minimise what Councillor Quinn's asked for, but to actually try to make the area on whole safer. Because I know that she's mentioned places like skate parks and walking home and stuff, and there might be other issues there. So for example, at skate parks, it might be unsupervised children might be making existing users feel like it's not safe for them to go and enjoy that recreation, or it might be people feel intimidated by people that cycle at speed along the Esplanade. They're just a couple of examples that I can think of. But I think that by having the review that Lynn's asked for alongside a wider review, we can inclusively make Inverclyde a better place for everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Natasha. Chris Curley.
Thank you, Provost. Certainly, as the Healthy Lifestyles Champion, I'm very pleased that Lynn has brought this this request towards the council. I think it's important that nobody in our nobody in our area lives in fear, because that is definitely not the way to have a healthy lifestyle. And I also recognise, as members will be aware, that I'm a keen proponent of active travel, and it's very important that we actually look at how we can actually open up our area to women of all ages, to ensure that they feel safe and the ability to actually use the new facilities that we will hope to be providing in the near future in the Inverclyde. Because if we don't do that, we've missed an opportunity to try and design these new facilities and our existing facilities to the benefit of some of the most vulnerable people in our community, because of the nature of the fear that is out there. I think that there's been comments made about us maybe combining this with an overall study into this issue. And I think there'd be maybe a concern on my part that might dilute the survey to an extent you might not get as much information out of it. And I think possibly it might be a case of maybe looking for doing a number of targeted surveys as we go forward, as we might get better engagement. So I think I'd be a wee bit concerned about having one survey trying to get a one-size-fits-all approach, and it might be better to lead with this women's survey at the start, and then bring other surveys on as are deemed required. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Chris. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Provost. I hate being a narcissist who quotes herself. Well, who am I kidding? I love being a narcissist who quotes herself. But a couple of weeks ago in the column that I do for the Greenock Telegraph, I kind of spoke about what exactly has just happened this afternoon. When we talk about something that's an issue that particularly relates to women, it then becomes, but what about everybody? And that doesn't happen the other way. It doesn't happen in the other direction. I've never ever heard anybody talk about the high rate of male suicide and women turn around and say, what about women's suicide? We understand that there are issues that do affect different genders, different characteristics of people, different demographics in different ways. And so I think I really do thank Lynn for bringing this forward. I think it's timely. I think we've had a month or so of just a more concentrated focus on what goes on inside our minds, the kind of fears that we live with as women sometimes, that we're now expressing. And I really do think if we do something that is about the wider issue, then we are diluting an issue that just happens in this instance to be a little bit more acute for one gender within our community. I was going to suggest doing something wider, because you don't want to kind of miss the opportunity to gather information about how you can make Inverclyde better in an entirety. I do accept that that's a thing, but we already have the mechanisms to be able to do that. We've got an advanced, mature and completely well-functioning citizens panel, and we can plug in to that at any point that we want to, a number of questions or a number of things that we want to look at in terms of public safety in a wider sense, or how we use our public parks and spaces. But in this instance, I would 100% support Provost Lynn's proposal to do a particular piece of work about the perceptions and the articulations of safety for women in Inverclyde, in the hope that it will not only give us information that we don't already know, that it will bring people's experiences to the fore, and it will help us make better decisions about how we plan, how we develop, how we regenerate Inverclyde going forward. Because when we do that in a gender balanced way, there's lots of research. University of Montreal did some great research that says when there's a gender balanced planning process, I think decisions are better made. So I wholeheartedly concur with Lynn's suggestion that we do some focused piece of work in terms of female safety.
Thanks again, Elizabeth. Ronnie?
Thanks very much, Provost. Can I say, first of all, that I fully understand the general concerns that has been expressed here about people's safety. But I felt that the degree we were getting away from Lynn's point to a certain extent. Some years ago, Provost, the United Nations published a study, and it was relating to safe communities for women and girls. And with your permission, I'd like to quote from that report, Provost.
Yes.
It states, women and girls experience situations of violence that are different from those experienced by men. Violence that is inflicted against women because of gender is one of the worst discriminations they suffer. Women and girls are sexually harassed in streets, parks, open spaces, schools and workplaces, and while using public transport. 60% of women are afraid of walking alone at night, as opposed to 17% of men. In some countries, the total reported crimes were 83% against women in towns and cities. The study showed that women change routes much more often than men do, and tended to stop going out alone after dark, while men did not. The conclusion was that women and girls feel and perceive safety and insecurity differently than men and boys. The report continued, making streets and open spaces safe for women and girls can expand their perceptions of being equal citizens. The creation of safe community spaces for women and girls affords them opportunities and must be addressed urgently by those with civic responsibilities. It must be recognised that widespread violence against women is an obstacle in the development of towns and communities. And so, Provost, this UN resolution at the time was welcomed by COSLA and indeed by the Scottish Government. At present, we have fantastic opportunities under the Safer Streets initiatives to adopt and address the concerns which have been identified by the United Nations. And I think basically what Lynn's proposal is getting to. So, you know, from my perspective, basically COSLA, the Scottish Government, adopted proposals, but it seems, as Chris Curley has said, that we might want to amend or dilute or change them in some way. So my point, Provost, is I think this is an excellent progressive request from Councillor Lynn, and I would wholeheartedly endorse it. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ronnie. Natasha?
Yep, thank you, Provost. I just want to come back in on the fact that it's been implied that we're trying to dilute what is a women's issue, and that is not at all the intention. The intention is to make sure that all citizens feel safe, and I accept the point that we've got a citizens panel, but the argument could be used that we could use a citizens panel to get this information as well. I think it would be unfair to go out to an open consultation or do an open body of work on one issue such as this, which is an important issue to engage with, because I myself have found myself changing where I go out to exercise if it's late at night, or if I'm walking back from somewhere, making sure I pass certain CCTV cameras and the like. So it's not at all to dilute that, and I actually don't like the insinuation that I, as a woman, would not be taking women's issues seriously, which I do. I think it's about the way that we frame this and the way that we decide to engage with this is really important. So yes, what Councillor Quinn has asked for is definitely important and should be done, but I do think that at some point, whether it's alongside this or in the future, we should be conducting a community-wide one as well in a similar fashion. Use citizen panel for both, or go out to open engagement with the public on both. I just think that there needs to be a set way of doing this so that the measures for both can be compared properly, rather than using citizens panel for one and using an open consultation for the other.
Thanks, Natasha. Before we turn to address the recommendation, have either of our either councillor who is on a phone link does either councillor on a phone link wish to make a contribution?
Yes, please, Provost.
Right, Tim.
Yeah, can I just say thank you, Lynn, for bringing this before us today. I think, as Liz had said earlier, it is very timely. It's something that I've thought long and hard about myself in the past. Certainly when Sylvia's gone out for a night out with her friends, I'm always at about getting dropped off at the door and staying with friends at the end of the night. So, and it's terrible you have to think that way. So, you're absolutely right. Can I just ask though, one, when you're looking at this, can you also consider females with a disability? Because at ICOD some years ago, we ran a campaign. We had 2 or 3 disabled females who were getting hassled several times in and around the town centre, and we started a campaign. There was a campaign at that time of safe havens, whereby some shops would display a sticker where somebody could go in to just get away from anybody that was hassling them. So can you please, when you're looking at this, ensure that you consider the issue of anybody who's female and with a disability. But thank you very much for bringing us here today, and I fully support what you're doing.
Thank you, Jim. Christopher. I think we've lost Christopher.
Provost, at this point, could I interrupt just to clarify advice I gave earlier to Councillor Quinn when she asked if she required a seconder? So just to clarify my advice to Councillor Quinn, as I stated previously, no seconder was required in order to put the member's request. However, should Councillor Quinn or another member be moving the member's request, that a seconder would be required. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks very much.
What I was intending to do was to return to Lynn to see if she wanted, for commentary, and then to proceed to the recommendation. Is that quite legitimate?
I think that would make perfect sense. Yes, certainly, Provost.
Okay. Lynn, do you have anything further to say? I mean, the subject has been widely aired, but Lynn, do you wish to contribute further?
Yeah, just to summarise, so basically I've been asked to bring this forward at the council, not for myself, but on behalf of the women. So I've engaged over 200 women who are really keen for me to take this to the council. So it's just to say that they were keen to get their voices heard. So this is not about us or any individual councillor. This is about the women of Inverclyde who have said that we don't want to accept this anymore. We want you as a council to look to see what you can do about this issue that it has been long-standing. So I think we need to, I mean, I have heard about what about this and what about that, and go back to Liz's point, but you know, like, well, not one person's mentioned the fact that we've got a problem with women's safety is because we've got male perpetrators. So I understand and I appreciate. I've got a son of my own, so I know and I want to protect everyone. But we've got an issue with male violence, and it's normally male, male on male and male on female. So, so this issue has been brought by the women of Inverclyde. They want me to push this forward. They've had enough and they want us to do something about it, and I 100% agree. So that will be looking at all women, young women, older women. I've spoke to disabled women. The fact that I've got an online forum has been great for a disabled mother who never gets to go and give her opinion. So the first thing she did was thank me for engaging in the digital format. So it will cover all women of the community, but I don't want it being diluted. So I think I'll go back to my point. We have got a gender-specific issue. We need gender-specific data on it so we can put forward a gender-specific solution. And that's just it. So it's absolutely fine as it is. So I would be grateful if everyone can just support as it is. No add-ons, no extras. If anyone has an issue of another area of the community that they're concerned about their safety, absolutely bring that forward, and I'll be 100% behind that as well. So that's me, Provost. Thank you very much.
No, thank you again, Lynn. I think we'll go to the recommendation. Do we agree?
Provost, apologies for interrupting. So if we could ask if there is a seconder for Councillor Quinn's motion to move the request.
Do you have a
Yeah,
seconder?
I'll second, Provost.
Who was that?
Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Councillor Arfeld.
Thanks, right. Councillor Arfeld will second it. Right, okay. Do we agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Provost, apologies. Can I just clarify that there are no amendments to the member's request?
I don't think there were any.
No amendments. Thank you.
No. The
Provost, just again, Lynn, I did not try to weaken it. What I was trying to say, and I said at the beginning, you were right to bring this up. I went through it a lot. I've done various things on it, my wife, but there's also young boys being abused, and sometimes they don't tell folk exactly what's happening. And all I'm saying is we're going to look at Inverclyde, we've got to look at where these, you're right what you mentioned about the parks, where they're playing and it's all boys and they're upset, but there's also walkways that girls can't go, neither can boys. And if you're going to point out a place, don't go that way and it's not lit up properly, it's too many trees, let's do that and make sure everybody can walk along that way, or it's safer.
Right.
That's what I was trying to do. Okay?
Right, okay, Chano, that's noted, and we proceed now to item number 9. This is a traffic regulation order, and it's a remit from the Environment and Regeneration Committee. We've already approved it. I'm going to ask, do we agree?
Agreed.
You agreed, right? Okay. The next item is also a proposed traffic regulation order, and it has been remitted to us by the Environment and Regeneration Committee. Do we agree?
Agreed.
Item 11 is has quite a lengthy title. It's a capital strategy 2021 to 31. That's the long-term one, and the treasury strategy over the next 4 years, 2021 to 25. Again, this is a remit, but this time from the Policy and Resources Committee. Alan, could you speak briefly on this?
Thank you, Provost. I'm happy to speak briefly about this matter and happy to answer any questions. The only points I would make is these are important documents, and I appreciate it's coming to the end of a fairly lengthy council meeting. But to put it in context, the council spends more on loans charges than it does on 8 of its 11 services in total. So it's important that the loans charges and our borrowing and investments are managed properly. Hopefully members get comfort from these documents, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions for Alan? No. So, do we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Right. Thank you, and thank you all for your patience, and thank you all for your attendance here. Possibly it wasn't...
Provost, apologies for interrupting. Can I just remind you that we're moving into private session now for a number of private matters. Thank you.
Right.